Welcome, everyone. It's Let's Talk About Web3, episode 14. I'm here with my co host, Easy, and our special guest, Pichi. Our guy, Ohnahji B, our co host, is on vacation this week, so we're rocking it out. And we're excited because he'll potentially come up in the chat or if not, watch this back. So yeah, we're excited to be here. As always, we'll start off with a little bit of gratitude. I guess I'll start off this week. I'm grateful for my team at Wave Wars. It's been an insane year, 2 years, honestly. But in the last like 3 or 4 weeks, it's been a pretty insane rush where I've been able to, I feel like, be utilized in one of my best selves. And that's like bringing the right people in to potentially collaborate with what we're doing and bringing those individuals to Hurricane because he's an absolute killer when it comes to, talking about what we're doing and what he's building, and then absolutely killing it in the dev game as well and building the whole thing. So I'm just grateful for our whole team. And then Candy on the other side, absolutely insane at killing the content game. We've been seeing a lot of our stuff start to make some progress that it's been a blast to be able to see people really grow towards one of our projects. So it's just like it's awesome to see just like talk every single day and move forward. So I'm super grateful. I see Candy in the chat. Let's go. Thank you. So yeah, shout out to Candy, shout out to Hurricane, and yeah, we'll shoot it over to you, Easy.
Oh man, super grateful to be here today and very grateful to have Pichi with us. Probably my favorite person on the
Love
Farcaster.
that.
Like just so much value has come out of being able to connect with Pichi and going to the State of the Unions on Monday and just kind of, getting to know a bunch of people beyond just the like timeline and connecting and having great conversations and just broadening, the friend base over there. So super grateful that Pichi is able to join us, and definitely grateful that I got to have a really awesome road trip this last week with Jose and Felons, my two co-hosts that I've been doing music stuff with in Web3 for years and years. And Jose has been able to come up through crowdfunding. He got his ticket through crowdfunding on Farcaster, and to be able to come from Venezuela and visit and like play some gigs and just, we've been able to show him around California a bunch. We got to go to Yosemite, which was incredible. So yeah, just it's been a pretty awesome last week. So I will throw it to Pichi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pichi. Thank you so much for having me. And as far as what I'm grateful for this week, it's gonna sound a little cheesy because it's always, friends and family who are there to support you. And I really appreciate my mom who does not have a Farcaster account, but checks my Farcaster every day and sends me little
That's
messages and reminds me to check in on things and kind of plays along with my entire kind of existence on Farcaster. And I just love that that's something that we can share. So even though she's not into Web3 and crypto is not really her thing, she does pay attention. She asks me a lot of questions, and she's a good sounding board sometimes for when I think things are kind of obvious on the network. She reminds me that they're not, and that I need to explain things and I should write about that. And when she asks me questions, sometimes she inspires things I talk about on the union and different things like that. So I just have to give her a special shout out. And then again, I'm just a little grateful for Farcaster being the special corner of the internet where the innovator class lives, because I meet the most interesting and amazing humans here, and I would not trade it for the world. So I know it's got its growing pains, and we're about to start the chapter of the client wars, and I'm sure it's going to get really exciting over the next few months. But I think fundamentally we all come here because there's so many cool little Legos and things we can do with blockchain that a few years ago I never imagined. Like I used my crypto to buy NFTs, and I thought that was kind of the end of it. I didn't ever imagine a space where it would be so easy to, support my friends in different ways, or even like micro tipping, all this stuff that is now like coming to fruition. Is happening because of this protocol that we're all kind of playing with. And I can't fathom, what does it look like in 5 years? And what does it look like when money like Coinbase gets behind it and says, hey, we believe this is the next version of the internet. So, let's throw some cash behind it and go play. Like that makes me really, really excited. And I just feel very lucky to be here.
Boom.
Awesome.
I love that. I think my favorite thing that you said about that is having your mom there. That non-crypto perspective is something that I felt like was a superpower when I came into the space in 2023, when it was a lot more of a bear. So there wasn't a lot of supply as well. So like it was a really interesting perspective at that point. And now, 2, 3 years into it, my perspective is now, a crypto native, very skewed, 24/7 in the ecosystem. So when I have those conversations with the folks that are my friends that are out of it, but know a little bit of what I'm doing, it's always a great reminder of how far we've come, but how far we also have to go, right? So no, I appreciate you being here. That's an awesome piece of gratitude. I would love to have you share maybe a little bit of your story into kind of getting into crypto or Farcaster, and then yeah, oh, I saw Philens in the chat, Candy in the chat. Feel free to ask any questions along the way. We're just excited to share a little bit about what you've been doing, and then we can also tap in at the end a little bit maybe about Farhouse, because I know Easy's been having his Farhouse spaces. I know you've been having your Farhouse spaces. So I think maybe just tapping into that like social audio side as well. So yeah, feel free to share what you want. The stage is yours, Pichi.
Thanks so much. So yeah, when I came to Farcaster, let's see, I joined in early 2024. I think I joined on January 28th, and this was literally a couple of days before frames dropped. So it went from, okay, this is like kind of like Twitter, but it's a lot of crypto people, to, oh wow, there is something really special here, because suddenly I can, do things inside of this app. And it reminded me of like that energy when, Facebook kind of first had their take on mini apps, and you could actually, stay on the Facebook app all day. I was like, wow, I could stay on Farcaster all day just playing with all these little things. And, people were building small games, and the ability to, mint NFTs in one click. And as someone who had been in crypto for quite a long time, but just meaning like I purchased crypto and just, left it on a ledger and did nothing with it until 2021, when like NFTs were all the rage, and it was like, oh, I can use my crypto to buy art. This is really cool. I didn't really imagine like that next phase of like I could use my crypto to do more interesting things, or I could have a social app that's, on these blockchain rails. Like that just kind of blew my mind. So I originally came to Farcaster because I constantly got deplatformed from Twitter. I talk about cannabis and psychedelics because that's what I do in real life. I'm a big advocate, both as a patient and as a person trying to get the law changed. And the more I talked about the law on Twitter, the more I kept getting taken down. And this is, way pre-Elon time, but even post-Elon time, it was a little bit of drama. So I was really passionate about decentralized social media. So I left Real Social probably in 2014-ish and hadn't really been back online. I did some Discords because, obviously that's where the crypto NFT people were. And I heard a bunch of folks who had gone to ETH Denver chatting about having a gated group chat on Farcaster for anybody who held a Buffy corn. And I was like, what is Farcaster? So I joined to see what everybody was talking about. I realized, oh, wow, this is like, what social media could be. Like, this is the internet we all dreamed of, where it's like, nobody can censor you. A big company can't say, hey, we don't like you talking about cannabis. And I'm like, yo, I'm not selling drugs online. I'm trying to get the law changed. And I posted a PDF of like the next draft of this House bill, and you deplatformed my account because you said I broke the law. Like, I did not. This is stupid. And trying to get a real human, it was ridiculous. And I was like, I'm not playing these games anymore. I'm not doing it. And it aggravated me because getting good, safe information about cannabis and psychedelics is really hard on the internet with censorability. And I understand that, platforms have some responsibility to follow the law, but we also live in a country where it's legal in certain states and not others. And we should not deprive everyone of the right to information that is accurate because, we're still fighting a legal battle on another side. So I'm very passionate about like a free and open internet. And I thought Farcaster was the best shot at free and open internet, plus, social that's not controlled by big companies. And I got really excited about that. And I came here and I kind of jumped in, and my first few cast got, 0 likes, 0 engagement. It took me a while to figure out exactly what was going on. but I think I hit it right at the right time because frames dropped. Everybody was using frames and developers were really open to feedback then. So I was able to, use their frames and then ask questions and they would respond. And that started to feel really magical to me. So I leaned in as much as I could. I played with as many little frames that were possible. I tried to meet all the developers who were building projects. And I came across a project called Paragraph, and their founder was there and they were like, hey, we're going to make a frame that highlights paragraphs. So I said, okay, I'm going to write about things I find confusing on Farcaster. Because the best way to find good information is sometimes not to ask a question, but to write a very authoritative post on what the answer is. And then magically people come out of the woodwork to correct you and provide the right information. So I started drafting this article, putting it on Paragraph, and it was great. I met a lot of people because of that, a lot of developers. And then I met the Paragraph team and they were reaching out to help and ask for feedback. And I said, wow, this is an amazing place. I can talk to developers directly. And I was talking to the founder of Paragraph. Colin was answering my questions himself. He was tagging in members of his team, to kind of help me navigate things. I ended up writing about Ham from the LP channel. And the ham emoji was breaking Paragraph's frame because they never thought somebody would have a title of a serious written piece on Paragraph that contained emojis. They just didn't build for that. And I said, well, it's kind of important because the emoji is how we're going to do this tipping thing. So they're like, okay, let's see what we can do. And, we did some workarounds and some back and forth, but it was really fun to be able to, have these conversations in real time directly with developers and founders, because I never found that on Twitter or Facebook or Discord so much, where you could get that kind of one-on-one interaction and feedback. And that's when I recognized that this was going to be a really special place, that this was going to be where people were going to be testing things and trying new things out. And as someone who loves to be early and loves to be the first person to do things, this just tickled everything in my brain. And I was like, okay, I'm going to lean into Farcaster and see where this goes. And I guess I've been here for a year and a half now. And obviously I'm still very into it and care a lot about it.
It's super special to have a place where people, especially the builders, are just building in public and are interacting with the people that are using their mini apps or their services, collecting the coin and staking it and tipping it and all these things. To have that out in the open and to have that contact makes it so much more enjoyable. It builds sort of a rapport and more trust there, because on just the wild internets, on the Twitters or the, Facebooks or TikToks or whatever, it's really just sort of, you're going in blind, and there's a lot of hype around things that is, maybe easy to get caught up in. But if you don't really know much about the people behind something, how are you going to be able to fully understand or trust that there's going to be something cool coming out of it? So yeah, that's something that I think is really special about Farcaster. If you don't mind, I actually always love to go a little deeper, to roll it even farther back, and just to hear, how did you get into crypto? Have you always been a techie? It's always super fascinating kind of what touches led somebody into crypto first, now that we kind of know how you got on and into Farcaster.
Yeah. So I guess, so I'm going to kind of share a story where I think about the folks who spent their Bitcoin on pizza, and people are like, haha, they're so dumb, they spent it on pizza. And I think, well, at least they got a pizza out of it, because I spent my Bitcoin on a BBS platform, which is a bulletin board forum, to make my signature glow and to have some people edit my little profile picture and make it animated and do some custom back end work to make that happen. I paid them in Bitcoin, and that BBS doesn't even exist anymore. So at least those guys got a pizza, and I wasted mine on stuff because, again, it was just magic internet money at the time. Didn't really think anything about it, didn't really understand seed phrases and how important all that stuff was. And even though I guess I technically had a seed phrase from that first Bitcoin wallet, I definitely don't have the Bitcoin because I spent it all on these forums and online games and different things, because again, it was worthless, whatever, right? So I know a lot of friends that kind of went through that with Doge on, Reddit, where they were
Yeah.
like, oh, this is worthless, whatever. And then it was like, oh, snap. Maybe I should not have done that. But, you win some, you lose some. So
Exactly.
I guess I got into it like pretty early, but I didn't take it really seriously until exchanges started to come into play.
Mm.
And I totally agree with people where it's, not your keys, not your coins. I get that. But as someone who was trying to do this all very legally, right? Because my motto is only do one illegal thing at a time. And in real life, I work in cannabis and psychedelics. So when we add crypto on top, got to be extra careful. I didn't really take it seriously until exchanges existed and there was a way to, get like real amounts of money into crypto. So I was not early enough to like mine things or anything like that. Like I had to purchase my crypto and I needed a way to on ramp and to trade, American, dollars to become digital crypto. So that's really when I thought it was more interesting. But at the time, it was really just kind of buying projects that looked interesting and, leaving them on an exchange to be like, I'll deal with this later when I need to, and I definitely had a few little airdrops here and there that didn't really amount to anything and, traded them away and stuff like that. But got the most serious about if I think this is a thing and, I want to be part of it, I should have this as part of my kind of long-term investment strategy. And when I think about investing, I always think of that as something that's a 10, 20-year horizon. So it was like, what will this be in 10 or 20 years? And, on one hand, it was like, I could, light $1,000 on fire and what would happen, right? It was like, I had to think of it that way. Like this could go to zero, but what could it be? And, what could that be worth? So I spent a few years, definitely kind of DCAing into more traditional crypto. And then looking hard at companies who were doing kind of the back end of crypto, like, the Circles and the Ripples of the world who were kind of playing around. And we'll see if that ever turns out to be anything interesting. But I was really interested in the rails because I figured if blockchain was going to be a thing, and a lot of people in cannabis tried to make blockchain a thing, to have it where our supply chain was undeniable on the blockchain. But at the time, we were dealing with mostly Bitcoin. Ethereum was too new. The thought of every step of this process, which in some cases is 500 steps from, plant to product on a shelf, thinking of the gas to like write that to every time. I mean, no, that's like $6,000, for an ounce of cannabis. It was stupid, but the tech was almost there. We were really close. So I was thinking about this from a lot of different avenues because the cannabis industry and the crypto industry have always been close because cannabis has issues with banking and crypto can solve a lot of that. But you're also, we're in enough hot water with the government and the IRS and all those people as it is. When we added that crypto layer, it started to get really sketchy. But a lot of people tried it. They tried to do, NFTs. They tried to do, customer loyalty via, coins and different stuff. I mean, people got really creative and I appreciate it because it forced me to look at crypto in a different way. So I've never been a day trader where it's like buy a meme coin and, sell it 20 minutes later. I've always thought, who's building the rails? What, crypto could potentially be, what moves any of these industries forward. And I always thought about it from that point of view. So been in it for a long time, but really not part of the crypto scene daily, probably until NFTs really got big at the end of 2021. And I realized I could take some of that crypto that was just sitting on exchange, doing nothing, or maybe, I might have had some staked in Gemini, which then got lost to FTX and, made me really rethink what is my long-term storage strategy and which companies do I trust. But other than that, it's, it's basically just sitting there doing nothing. So I was like, well, let me grab some ETH and start, buying some art because this is kind of cool. And I had a lot of fun with that. And I definitely fell in love with JPEGs, which my friend Tony is always telling me not to fall in love with JPEGs, that, he's like, the way you make money in crypto is to sell things, not to just collect them. But I am a collector at heart. I have a stock collection.
I feel that.
I have a lot of things that I like to look at them. I like to look at beautiful things. I like to print them out. I like to, make collages out of them. Like I enjoy art. So you know, should I have spent all that money on NFTs? Probably not. But did I learn something from it? And, you know, do I have a different appreciation for it? Sure. And then it led me to, you know, make my own NFTs, which if you had told me that 3 years ago, I would have laughed in your face because it was so expensive to mint a collection on Main. And then when Base came out, you know, it changed everything. So it was like, well, if I mess this up and nobody buys it, I've wasted $30. And, you know, and even saying that out now, I'm kind of laughing. I'm like, I can't believe it was $30 to mint a collection, you know, in March of 2024. And now it would cost me 30 cents. Like they've made huge strides, right? But it's made it where this is no longer a pipe dream of like bringing cannabis on the blockchain or, you know, bringing, you know, art to the blockchain in like a very affordable way where people can take that chance and try. And it's not, you know, you don't have to be an established artist. Cause I think to mint between 2021 and 2023 on Main, you really had to, you know, promote the hell out of it. And you had to have a network and you had to have an allow list that was, you know, 10x oversubscribed and like hope that people liked it. And you had to hype, because if you didn't sell out, you wasted thousands of dollars in gas just putting it online, right? And now with Base, it's like everybody can take a shot at putting their art, putting their photos, putting their music, putting their podcast, putting their writing, like whatever creative thing you can do, you have a chance to put it out there for everybody for pennies. So there's no longer that barrier to entry. And to me, that's what's been the most exciting is to like watch in the last few years that I can send my friends crypto to their phone number, right? Like through Coinbase and have them set up a smart wallet and buy my art in like 20 minutes. Whereas 2 years ago, to try to explain that to somebody, you know, and even a year ago when I had friends who were like, hey, I want to buy your Anime Outcast collection. I have ETH. I'm trying to mint it. It's not working. And I'm like, wait, do you have ETH on Base? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, you know what? Can you just Venmo me?
That's exactly why we chose to do Wave Wars on Solana. That was the Hurricane's number one reason. We had NFTs before, and it was like people like didn't know how to get their base ETH, and it's like, damn, that is a challenge, right? Like, and yeah, it's just one of those pieces of infrastructure that is slowly getting solved over time. That I think I'm really fascinated by that side of one of the I like when coming from like that crypto OG side of like not Web3 and like a lot of the individuals I've been introduced to in the music and art space have all gotten introduced to it through crypto through NFTs in 2021. So being able to see, you know, that side of it and also being able to have that like emphasis on infrastructure is something that I really like. And that's also kind of what drew me to Farcaster of like, okay, we have this permissionless social graph that is kind of like open source social media, right? But then there's also like some of these other challenges of like, you know, client versus protocol. And I've actually been recently seeing some of the things in the last few weeks that have been it's just interesting to see what direction different clients are taking. But I'm excited to see the growth of this like network of networks where more individuals and more ecosystems build their clients for their community and kind of interact with this open social graph in many different ways. And you could, in a sense, have different apps for different communities, right? That interact all with Farcaster, right?
Yeah.
And in that mind, for me, it's like, wow, I think I really could just like abandon all my other socials and still not have enough time for all this stuff on Farcaster right now. Never mind, right? Like as
I
things
pretty much
grow.
did that. Like, because there's so much going on. Like you could spend pretty much all day and like not like get bored or do the same thing twice. You could play, 20 different games. You could, spend like, you go pop a balloon here, you go play like a word game there, you go play a shooter over here, then you go interact with some awesome piece of music and like collect it. And then you're like having a conversation with somebody and then maybe jump into a live space on Farhouse. Like there's just so much that's going on. It's actually pretty incredible. And I think we're just at that point where like the real growth is going to come into play with with Coinbase having Base app in its sort of beta phase now and going to be opening up to much more people. That's going to be really interesting. And just sort of to take it back to some of the things Pichi was talking about with like cannabis and the blockchain and crypto, like back in those early days of, 2020, 2019, 2020, when people were starting to like come up, with more of these ideas of tying those things together, we had a government that was really anti-crypto. So I'm hopeful that when we get some, a little better guidance and legislature and have some clarity on like, different blockchains and what we can do with them, that will make it. And of course, with the development of like lower transactions and a lot of different blockchains to choose from, that could be, really helpful for the cannabis industry. It was, I was working in CBDs, probably like 2016, something like that, 2015, 2016, sort of started helping a friend that was doing a small CBD company. And then in 2019, when I learned about like, smart contracts and NFTs, and was really diving in heavily to blockchain and the artist communities and stuff, like one of the first things I wanted to do was like, oh, I want a vending machine that's like in metaverses where you buy an NFT, you get a dope piece of art, and then you can like trade in that for like a jar of salve or like some tincture or whatever. And it just like, there was too much legal gray area to actually do anything. But I think, possibly now or in the coming future, that could be done without that sort of like, giant looming dark cloud over you. So I think we're coming into some really interesting times for that as well.
Yeah, like that's a literal burn to redeem that 5 years ago would have been expensive and impossible. And today is probably like, in a legal state, possibly like a thing you could really do, right? And the fact that we now have tools, which again makes me so excited about, Farcaster and some of this underlying stuff, like what they've done with their wallet and what Coinbase has done with their wallet is, before, like when I was trying to explain to people, they had to bridge their ETH and do all this nonsense. Like it was so hard. And now I could just be like, hey, Venmo me $5. And then I Venmo, not Venmo, sorry. They Venmo me $5. And then I send them $5 in USDC, right? So like neither one of us has lost anything at this point, but now they have $5 digital. And with $5, they can get on either of these apps and they can just start instantly playing things and doing things. Because if they try to buy something that's Solana or, buy something that requires some ETH gas, like the wallets just take care of it now. And that's been kind of a slow burn and maybe not as big of a deal to those of us currently on Farcaster because we know how to switch all that stuff and do all that. But for somebody that has no idea, when they just click and it works, that's the magic. Like they don't need to know,
100%.
oh, I'm sorry, you need ETH on base, or this one's in USDC, or this one's in, that's a different chain. That like they just click the button where they say buy and it says, okay, give me 3 extra seconds. Cause in the background, it's got to go bridge or it's got to convert it or do whatever, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. It happens like magic and boom, they have the NFT they want or the, key to open up a mini app, or they bought their 5 extra lives or their farm points or like whatever the thing is. We have to make it that easy where people just click and it works before we can onboard normies. Because as much as I would love my mom to have a Farcaster account, sometimes she asks me questions and I'm just like, oh my God, you should have like no money tied to this at all because this is a hard thing to explain. And even thinking of my tech savvy friends, I'm like, whoa, do I want to like, encourage them to do this when crypto really isn't their thing? And I'm like, we're close, like we're closer than we've ever been. But I still think it needs like a few more months, a few more, people really hardcore testing it. And for a team like Base that has the resources and wants to onboard non-crypto native people and teach them how they can use their existing content and existing platforms and bring that all over to Web3, when those people start having success stories, that's when it's time to bring my somewhat tech savvy, familiar with apps kind of friends and be like, hey, I'll send you your first $5 to get you started. You play and do whatever. But remember, this is real money. This is a real thing. Like, think twice before you interact with wallets and stuff. And, we saw that happen last week. I mean, last week, we had like several scams that a bunch of people, got scammed, not because they did anything wrong, because they were extremely coordinated scams. But it's like, we have to remember that this is real money. This does have real stakes. And that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot because we're all crypto native. We've all been scammed before. Like if you've been in Web3 for more than 5 years and you haven't been scammed, you're a unicorn. Like, I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you went through the 2021, 2022 phase without having a Discord hack or a Twitter hack or a, fake website. Like we all saw that stuff. And to think that this is also easy now, it's like, it's also ripe for taking advantage of new people. And like, that's something too, that I think as this stuff grows, we're going to have to talk a lot more about, and the teams are going to have to do a little bit more education of like, yo, this looks seamless to you, but here's, bad things that can happen, and here's how we prevent it. Like we make sure that, you can't one click and have someone drain your entire wallet. Like we can prevent that, but we can't prevent if you click a malicious link and then give them your seed phrase. Like that's something you should never do. And that's the kind of education that those of us who cut our teeth in Web3 know better. And like, even now, I know I should not be doing so much with my Farcaster wallet because it's a hot wallet, and I'm still doing it because it's convenient. I've let
Right.
override my sanity.
Yeah.
So I'm
I
like,
feel that.
betterment, that I got to join the little group and get in early and do the chat is now like a significant amount of money. Like I should maybe take all the excess and put that into another wallet and just keep what I need here. Or maybe I should put it into a Farcaster connected wallet, but not the Farcaster wallet. So like I'm trying to think even of how to use this more strategically, because I think if you've been on Farcaster since they introduced the wallet, you put your initial, $10 in to like get started. If you've been playing around and paying attention, like you should have at least a couple $100 in there because of airdrops and participation and, catching the right alpha on the timeline to like, buy some things or some creator coins. Like at this point, we should all be sitting back going, this is fun and this is convenient, but we need to like go back to our Web3 roots and think about security before we like bring all of our friends on here and then have them cry into the phone that, hey, I lost $1,000 because, I clicked a mini app or I clicked a button and I thought it was safe. And it was like, oh, there's no such thing as safe. Like we have 100%. To rethink this.
As we abstract away the crypto layers, people get lax with that privacy and security portion, right? That's super important. And it's just like a lot of things that are there in Web 2 that are just digital hygiene pieces that now that you do, custody your crypto and you have hundreds of dollars tied to 15 words, things are a little different than traditional rails where you can get your money back from the credit card company, right?
Totally.
So I love that. I actually think that's a really good bit about kind of really focusing on having your Farcaster as your hot wallet and not really having anything more than triple digits in there really, and moving some of those coins off to a vault or, another wallet that's less hot.
Yeah.
Well, even now, we've been very lucky where the couple of things that have gone wrong, right, which have been like bad actors exploiting Farcaster developers, right? Like it's been intentional. They've gone after these developers because they were popular projects. Like I don't think anybody like fundamentally did anything wrong. It happens, right? Contract exploits happen, things happen. We all learn from it, and by talking about it publicly, we all get better, and every developer goes and patches those holes, and we help each other out. But we've been lucky where some people are like, well, if something bad happens on Farcaster, it's okay because you'll probably just get reimbursed. And I'm like, no. That is not the way we should think about this. We should be extremely grateful that the two major things that happened happen to teams that are very well funded and very much care about their user base and their reputation and had the money to do it. For instance, if I put up an art contract because I was playing around on Claude and said, let me deploy my own NFT contract, and I put something in there that had an exploit because I'm not an expert at contracts, and people got drained and then expected me to personally reimburse them, I would not be able to do that. If it was like $1 mint and, a couple hundred people lost $1, like I could cover that. But if it was something significant, I couldn't. And I don't think we should put that expectation on, well, if it happens on Farcaster, don't worry, they'll just reimburse you. It's like, no.
This is an exception to the rule.
Exactly.
That's super, like so rare, but it does point to the quality of people, developers, builders, community on Farcaster, that the few things that, like I've had a couple of, projects that I interact with on the daily where those exploits were taken advantage of. And it's just like, it's like a unicorn when those developers are like, hey, we're making everybody whole. And luckily, none of those were
Yes.
more than like a few bucks, kind of maybe like $10. And it wasn't like whole wallets being drained. It was like your little wallet within the app, or a transaction fee that was higher than normal that people, were just excited and overlooked. But yeah, we've been like super, super blessed to have that type of like responsibility and high level of care for the people. And in the, the major space, that doesn't happen. And it again, just like, puts the community here on this like really, really top notch level.
I think
Yes.
Go ahead.
sorry if you're gonna continue. I was just gonna say I think that shows really well how Farcaster as a social network has curated a culture of creating reputation by putting some of these things on chain and having them be actually permanent instead of it's on the internet, it's permanent forever thing that I was told as a kid always, which is kind of true, but like only if it's archived, right? So things do get lost, but technically in the blockchain that never happens. As well as I feel like because it's a smaller neighborhood of people right now, as you go about your way in this network, people like your name is associated with the things you do and how you interact with people. So I think people take a much different approach to how they interact with individuals with this social media than they do with crypto Twitter, definitely, right? But
Yes.
even like an Instagram or a Reddit or some of these other platforms. So I think it's a really good amalgam of some of those things where it also leaves it as a open world for people to also build their own things on top of that. If they don't see something that's for them, they can actually just build it.
Yeah.
And I think that's just right, the coolest thing. Like you said, making them whole, showing that like that makes such a big difference to their reputation. All of those individuals that are there will 100% be, believers and community members forever from just that. And I also think that like just as a whole, like that, like you guys are saying, it doesn't happen in the general crypto community like at all. So yeah, it's just a nod to how awesome it is to be here at this time. And I think someone touched on, I think it was Pichi, you touched on having the ability to just like in the base app buy something that's not on the right chain and you might not have gas for it, but it do it all seamlessly behind the scenes. I think that's huge. Something that I believe it was the creator DAO said on the GM Farcaster podcast about how they see the base app as potentially the future of like onboarding individuals to being able to like do a lot of the things that you need to use multiple on rails and ramps and different things to do because Coinbase right now is probably one of the biggest behemoths in the crypto space. They're able to put everything together into a seamless app and also just leverage the integrations that blockchain brings, like having Zora be able to be there so that every single post they make is a coin, being able to leverage their backend on Farcaster so that everything that they're doing on their Coinbase wallet that's now the base app is now in a social interaction and on the feed and not just about trading. So all of those individuals that are in crypto, but like you said, not in Web3 or into the trading or the community, now see the social graph of even just like maybe the people on their phone, right? But it just is that integration where like people can just start doing things. And one of the coolest things I've seen, because we're big on on-chain music at the ZAO, is the Tortoise mini app and the fact that you can three
Yes.
click and get a music NFT from your timeline. So like anyone that you're following could send you could see it in any algorithm and three click and you could probably make that less in a different client maybe. But three clicks and you could get it in your wallet bot and that person gets the money immediately. And also the fourth thing is the fourth click is an immediate share back to your social graph. So just like this pipeline of social media growing, recreating this like NFT culture and bringing that back is super exciting because of the ease of like it's a lot. I mean, not just also in gas, right? That being almost nothing on Farcaster, but also now like the ease of use of like the frictionless way of minting an NFT. Like I could get one of my normies to come in, and I could have him share his screen and have him do the 4 clicks and just do that and be like, okay, now I'm gonna buy it from your share, right? And it's gonna take me 4 more clicks, and every single person in my followers list could see that. So that might be onboarding an artist, that might be onboarding a content creator, a curator, but like I think that's such a good way of being able to be like, okay, like now you can interact with crypto and just go wild, but you give the great idea of like, okay, just because all of that is there and frictionless, like doesn't mean you can just go hog wild and you don't have these other pieces of money hygiene and internet hygiene that the people who have been here before it has all been easy have taken the precautions to do, and it's still applicable today, right? So
Yes.
it reminds us that how important the onboarding process is in the education, and I like how you also touched on that a little bit.
I think that these new, blockchain social media platforms, and especially building on the Farcaster protocol, could be what makes like music and like music on the blockchain finally have some success, because it's been a pretty rocky road for musicians. NFTs first, as Pichi was talking about earlier, it was such a high cost thing to even just mint an NFT on Ethereum back in the day. So that was prohibitive, and just getting exposure. Now you could have just the people that are following you. If they follow you, they like your music, you could drop on Tortoise and sell a bunch of NFTs over the course of whatever, a week or something. And maybe they're not super high like value, but you're getting your music distributed. You're making a little bit. The majority of that is coming to you. So I'm excited to see how kind of music can fit into, Farcaster and the base app.
Yeah, and again, it's just, some of the stuff we're just really early on, right? So like musicians who have dealt with Spotify and Apple Music, like they can tell you till the cows come home about, how predatory these platforms are and how, yes, you're paying for distribution and what they're doing, but we don't have enough consumers yet. Like I can tell when people are like, why would I buy a music NFT? I'm like, oh, you've never had your iTunes account taken away, have you? And they're like, what? And I'm like, you've never woken up and your Kindle, is missing a book that you bought because Amazon took it away or the author got in a fight with the publishing house and that book that you
Always
paid
Sunny
for
episodes.
isn't there, right? Like these are some of the things that are starting to happen to people and like more people are talking about, but have not happened to enough. And so I spend a lot of time in Japan. So I have 2 Apple accounts because I can't use apps in Japan that are when I'm like on the US App Store and like vice versa. So sometimes I just have to like switch completely. And because I have done this, Apple has gotten mad at me several times. And I lost my Japanese music collection once. I lost my American music collection once. And I was like, no, forget this. Like I'm buying CDs. I am ripping them into MP3s, putting them on my own server. And like, I will never
Mm-hmm.
pay you guys for music again when I don't really own it. But with a music NFT, like I get it. Cause I'm like, oh, I have lost content I have paid for. I am more than happy to like make sure the artist gets most of this money and then keep it, wherever I want to keep it and put it because it's mine. And, it's great if I can access it from Farcaster and listen to it in the mini app while I'm scrolling the feed and doing that stuff. But I love that I can have it and know that that artist is getting it. And it's just going to take like somebody like iTunes or Apple Music to like tell people like, oh, hey, all that music you bought and paid 99 cents a song for, you don't have it anymore. And like once that happens, it will click for them. And I don't like want that to happen per se to anybody else because I know how much it sucked, but like it's almost like it has like something like that has to happen for most people to care. Because if you're not
And
into it, if you don't like, you know, uh, have a musician in your life who can like tell you all the dark side of these things, you're just like, oh, but you're on Spotify and I'm using Spotify and playing your music. Aren't you getting rich off this? It's like, no, I'm not. Like, not at all.
there's a I think there's a small amount of music lovers that also appreciate kind of the collectability and the ownership, because just like you said, your account can be yanked. They can say, oh, this song offends somebody, so we're pulling it out of everybody's libraries. Even just over the course of, having your own iTunes library back in the day that you could add stuff to really easily, and then changing in the operating system. So it's like, oh, my old library was gone. Now I have to like purchase all this stuff through you, and having it detached from you, not owned by you, in the cloud, like this weird rental type of system. Like a lot of people that, you know, collected albums or cassette tapes or CDs, depending on like your age group, had that like affinity for like.
Nope.
I think music NFTs brings a lot of that back to the culture of music and collecting and owning it.
Yes, I do love the chat too, is talking about IPFS, because that's another thing that like a lot of people are not aware of, is that sometimes on chain is like, well, the transactions on chain, but not necessarily the music or the art and things like that. And that's another good point too, right? Like it's so easy now that we sometimes forget like the back end of things. The same way it's like Farcaster's making this so easy to use a wallet. It is like excellent points that sometimes this stuff is not as on chain as we think it is, even like our cast and stuff like that, you know, our FIDs, I call them FIDs, like don't tell anybody, but I call them FIDs, not FIDs, are, you know, you bought your FID and that is on chain, but like your cast are not actually written on the blockchain the way we think of things being on the blockchain, right? Like this is where we joke about it being sufficiently decentralized. So we do still have some issues with that, where it's like, is your art really on chain, or is it somebody's on somebody's server, and that server could go away? And you know, that's something we need to think about as we get serious about like collecting. And if we're all going to start collecting again, I think people have good points here, where it's like, it's not as really there as you think it is, and maybe we need to start pushing that as artists of like, it's much more expensive to put the entire, you know, JPEG on chain, which is why I think a lot of some of the pixel projects are like, no, we're fully on chain. Whereas, you know, your fancy, you know, JPEG might not be, because to actually mint that on chain would cost a ridiculous amount of money, you know? So we have to think about that when we start doing media and videos, and, you know, what are you really buying? Because like it looks on the front end from Zora that you're buying the picture, you're buying the video, but you're buying like the coin, right? So this is where the seamlessness of one click and buying things, it's like, ooh, now we're almost kind of the dark side of it is like we're recreating those things where you have to pick a platform, you have to pick a thing. And sometimes folks don't understand, like you're not buying that video. The same way with Farcaster collectible cast, right? Like you're not buying the art. It might look like that, like, oh, it looks cute in your Warplet, you know, or your Farcaster wallet, but like you didn't actually buy that person's art. Some artists said, hey, buy this and I'll make you a real art piece, but no one is really putting it there hoping to sell their art for $1. They're putting it there and you're buying their cast as a way to like show them support. But I think a lot of folks are going to be sad when they go look at it on OpenSea and it's like, oh, I didn't get the video or the, you know, the JPEG or the picture. What? I just got the cast, huh? Like, this is some of the stuff where we make it look so seamless and easy on the UX, we forget that behind the scenes, it's maybe not as seamless and pretty as we think.
No,
That's been something. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it, Easy.
My rural internet disconnected for a little bit, so I'm not sure how much of my last little statements came through or not. But yeah, I think the whole, you know, kind of messaging of, oh, your art's on the blockchain was pretty false, because I think for a year, I thought all the NFTs I was buying were like, everything's on the blockchain, but most of that is just a pointer to the art. If it's on IPFS, if, you know, you're using something like Arweave, it is, gonna be more, you have a better chance of it staying actually up there and accessible. But yeah, most things that are quote unquote on the blockchain, it's actually not there. There's some metadata and a pointer to the image or the video that's hosted on some other server that could go down. And so I think that's important to, you know, let people know too. It's a great topic to touch on. And also it's a great point that, yeah, a lot of the, you know, kind of pixel art and things like that can go on chain easier, because it's a lot cheaper to put a pixel image onto the blockchain versus, you know, say a video or a song, or even, you know, a high quality photograph or something, which is something that, you know, doesn't get a lot of attention.
100%.
Yeah, especially if you think about, you know, buying a very high-end, well-known artist who is selling a one-of-one photograph, you know, as an NFT. It's like, what am I actually buying? You know, like, it's like, oh, if you're going to spend $1,000, you know, on this thing, like, make sure you know what it is. Because if it's a couple bucks, you know, and like a few people in the chat are saying like, oh, a couple projects, you know, disappeared. But if you spent $600 on it and it disappeared, you're going to feel very, very different than if you spent $1 and something bad happened. It's like, you know, we have to start thinking about some of that stuff as we move into this future. And if, you know, collecting becomes cool again, which I hope it does as someone who makes art sometimes, that, you know, it's a thing. And the easier it is on the front end, probably the maybe not so easy it is on the back end. And it's worth a good conversation.
And whole platforms have gone down where people spent, you know, maybe multiple ETH, so thousands and thousands of dollars on, you know, digital art or photography and things. And these platforms go down. They don't always have a backup plan. You don't always, you know, it can be basically a blank NFT, and you could have spent like $4,000 or $5,000 on something if it was a one of one from a popular artist, you know, from whatever 2020 or 2021. So it's something definitely that people should be aware of.
Yeah. Prism here is sharing a little bit about on-chain music requiring either the music needing to be encoded into the smart contract itself, and then your other options are using IPFS with pin service or Arweave with 200 years, which is like, okay, that's 200 years, but technically not permanent as well, right? So if you really want your music NFT to be there forever and on the blockchain, you need to encode it into the smart contract, like Prism's saying. So yeah.
Shout out Prism. And
Yeah.
I saw we had a question from Candy a little while back that just popped back into my head, and I wanted to get Pichi's thoughts on this. She said her daughter just turned 13, I think it was, and like, what was your thoughts on someone of that age joining Farcaster?
So it's always been really interesting to me because I enjoy Farcaster, and I realize that Farcaster has a few demographics, right? Like, it's definitely very elder millennial heavy. There's a lot of, you know, Gen X folks, and I can kind of tell when people posted their, you know, first cars or their first album they bought, like where the age range is. And I always thought they've been very lucky content wise, right? To like not have a content moderation team. And I'm sure you guys know, like, not everybody could cast videos for a long time. And like and a lot of that's because they don't have a dedicated content team who's looking at things and making sure. And a lot of it has been assumed that everyone there is an adult. And because there is money that you have, if you have money, you're probably not a small child. And, you know, I've never really worried that like who I'm talking to is not a adult. And as they started onboarding the college kids, like particularly, they were like, let's onboard more folks who are not the average Farcaster demographic. And some Farcasters started onboarding their kids who were, you know, early college age and thinking about younger. We started to really have that conversation. And what was pretty funny was, I think Bert Wurst, our lovely Farcaster Dachshund, was asking about collectible casts, and they said, oh, you've got to be 18 to do this. And he's like, well, does dog years count? Because I'm definitely not 18, but the assistants are. So, you know, technically it's okay. But it was something where I'm like, you know, this is going to be something we have to really contend with over the next time. And especially knowing that Coinbase Wallet, Jesse posted publicly that their wait list is 700,000 people long. And that's people who went to the website and clicked, put me on the Coinbase, you know, wallet app waitlist. Like, that's huge. And I'm sure a lot of those people are going to be a bit younger, and we have to like think, what does that look like and what does our content look like? Because there's a lot of art maybe that is not necessarily, you know, safe for work and potentially not safe for younger eyes. And to me, it's a challenge, right? Because I mean, that's sometimes the legal definition of pornography is, you know it when you see it, and you know art when you see it. And sometimes there's a hard line, or there's things that I would not want. Like, I wouldn't want to be scrolling Farcaster with my colleagues per se and have some of that art show up. But, you know, I'm an adult and I can make those decisions. But it's like, what happens when the platform, you know, goes a bit younger, and we get that 13 to 18, you know, right under 18 group that is allowed to use Instagram and is allowed to use, you know, YouTube. Like, they have some privacy policies in place for that. Farcaster does not, to the best of my knowledge, nor are they encouraging it, because there is real money involved and that gets complicated. And I think they've just focused on like, well, this is a space for people with money and adults and over 18. And right now, I don't think young teenagers would particularly find a lot of the content interesting and fun. And they would probably think it's like Facebook for old people kind of thing. Like they wouldn't really jive with most of it. But, you know, mini apps are fun. And if there's games where you could play games and make money, like that's very appealing if you're a kid that doesn't have money, you know, and you already play some iPhone games that have money involved, or, you know, play some video games, and like it creates, you know, a weird economic flywheel. So it's something that, you know, we're not dealing with today, but in the next few months, is this going to continue to kind of pop up and have to think about it? And do we have to think about how we do our content, or can we just keep assuming like, you got to have money to be on Farcaster? You know, you got to be an adult. You can't have a Coinbase account if you're not 18. You know, you can't do this stuff. Like there shouldn't be any kids here. And that's not necessarily true.
But at the same time, so I love that. I really like that. I'm thinking about, for me, so I'm a little bit younger than you guys. So it was a little different for me getting started on the internet. A lot of stuff was out there and already there. And as a whatever age it was, whether I was 13 or older, but any age under 18 or 16 couldn't have a bank account and a credit card, and just couldn't interact with anything online I ever wanted to purchase. For me, I had to buy Visa gift cards, right? So like that was my like, okay, like this is my way of getting my magic internet money, and like turning it into internet money in the first place, right? Whatever way that was, like wasn't crypto in any way, shape, or form, but it was like some form of collectibles, right? And I think that it's really cool to see that, like you were saying, like for some of your friends, you were just saying like, okay, you could give me $5 in cash, Venmo, whatever that is, and I could send you 5 USDC. So I think the barrier to entry coming a lot closer gives you that, like, okay, not only do we need to focus about privacy as a whole, but now like, okay, what is the difference between an open protocol that's completely open for everyone and then some form of censorship when it's, you know, not positive towards the environment and not conducive for a positive ecosystem, right? And how do you moderate that?
Yeah, I'm like, I think the Farcaster feed, at least for me, has been like really pretty clean and like responsible and courteous compared to like, you know, Twitter, where you're like getting like, you know, tagged by like randos that are like come join my OF, or like all this kind of weird stuff that is, you know, not of interest to me. But I just was thinking like, well, I wonder if in the future, where blockchain, you know, really grows to be like a thing for everybody, maybe someone will build on Farcaster like they had YouTube Kids, like a Farcaster Kids, and it's all about the games and playing, but you could still earn a little or something. Like I know that I have multiple friends that back in the early days put their kids to work basically mining crypto through playing games. Whether, you know, there was multiples, but oh God, what was I'm just blanked out on the name of one where I had, you know, a couple friends that were just, they'd get their kids.
I know
to
someone that's in chat that was trying to do that. So
and made like they
playing Axie Infinity, like,
yes,
you know,
Axie, exactly. I had friends who just put their kids to work playing Axie, and you know, it paid off. You know, that's probably some of that at least went into the college fund. But yeah, so it's a really interesting topic. And I do think like I wouldn't necessarily push. Well, my kids are older now, but I probably wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, let's get you on Farcaster because you can learn about blockchain. No, I would just kind of like, you know, maybe a couple games I would introduce them to, like, hey, here's a video game you could play where you could make money. And of course, that is all. There are things like that inside the ecosystem, but yeah, I think it is going to be a discussion that probably you know, becomes more relevant as things grow. And then something I just wanted to total sidebar mention to Pichi is, I don't know if you've heard of Normie Tech. It's a way basically to send funds to anybody that is like it's really good for maybe sending funds to somebody in other countries. You can send through Zaal to anybody's like email, and they can basically get USDC on the other end. So I just thought I'd mention that. If you haven't heard of it, it might be something interesting to look into for kind of either onboarding people
Wait,
or
what application was that, or what
it's
platform was
called
that?
Normie Tech.
Interesting.
Yeah. I heard about it. I'm trying to remember where. I
I
forget where I
think you
heard about
actually
it.
said it in the first Let's Talk About Web3
I
thing we
think
had, or the
so.
second one,
I had
because it
hopped
sounds
on.
very familiar.
Yeah, I had right around the first episode.
Interesting.
I heard about it. Like, I think DM'd the founder and said, "Hey, I have a bunch of friends in Venezuela. This could be really useful." He was like, "I'd love to get on a call with you." And a couple of them, we got on a call with like me and Jose. He demonstrated it, and like it's just really, really
Huh.
cool. So it's just something to maybe take a note on and check out later.
100%. Well, we are getting to that time, 7 o'clock. We got a bunch of awesome people saying some really cool things in the chat. Really cool folks out here. We got the Omniflix squad. We got Prism building M3. We got Candy in the chat. We got El Bayao in the chat as well. So shout out to all you guys. I just want to say I had a blast, Pichi, learning a little bit more about you and being able to ask some of my questions, and having you here with us this week as Ohnahji B is on vacation. I'm sure he'll be excited to listen back to it as well. And yeah, if you guys are trying to get more involved on Farcaster and tap in more, definitely make sure you tap into Pichi's spaces on Monday at 9 p.m. EST, the Farhouse State of the Unions. And that's an amazing way to get more involved too, if you're getting involved and new to Farcaster. So yeah.
Super. The State of the Union is like offers an incredible amount of value for your time. And of course, you can, ask questions in the chat or raise your hand and come up on stage and ask questions or join the conversation. It's been of tremendous value to me personally. And so I'd highly recommend people, whether you're new or you're old to Farcaster, just come to the State of the Union on Monday evenings and you will not regret it.
Oh, thank you guys so much. And I'm so glad we met that way, right? Because like
Yeah.
voice is an amazing way to just like
Mhm.
rocket launch a friendship and be like, oh, these are real humans who are cool. Like, of course, I'm going to follow them and see what they're up to and join them and all that stuff. So, super appreciate you guys having me here. And just as a FYI, I just looked in the App Store. So the Farcaster app is rated 12 plus. So
Okay.
they might have to think about that in the future because the Base app is rated 17 plus. So I guess because Coinbase is financial for sure, and so their lawyers have probably thought through a lot of this already, and they're probably onboarding 18 plus. That would be my guess. So that would be something fun to kind of watch as we grow, right? Because right now it's a cozy corner, but if there's 1 million people on Farcaster next year, we're going to be having a lot of these conversations about what is uncensorable social media mean when we involve kids, because that changes the dynamic. Because then what I can say to a group of adults, what I can say to you guys on Twitch, very different than what I might say about the way I speak about cannabis and psychedelics and art and money. If I knew 13-year-olds were answering, it'd be very different than the way I would talk about it if my audience was all adults. And a lot of us can do that. We can have those conversations and switch, but that's a big culture shift if we tell people like, hey, we have to be inclusive of kids here. And that could be a dynamic where there's certain clients that are like, no, this is the adult client, this is the kids client. How do you do that on an open protocol? Like this could be actually a really exciting conversation.
Well, it could be Farcaster Kids, right? Like that could be an opportunity for someone to jump in right here, teach folks about financial education, and just like make it like that, like super censored down, like 13 and under only content, right? Like you can't have like
exclude adults.
Even if it's like just normal content, it's like unless it's like educational or whatever it may be, whatever that person decides, there might be there's an opportunity there, right? Is what I think we figured out in this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's really exciting. I think you would somehow have to have some, monitoring of it or something so that
Well,
kids are
but that's the
like
beauty
safe
of creating
there.
a client that is centralized. So
Right.
whatever that team is, right? Like let's say YouTube or some like huge company wants to come in and do that, right? They can do that if they have that staffing and capital,
Yep.
right? So could be really cool. I'm excited. I think there's a lot of cool things. Maybe that's something Omniflix can come in and do and create that like educational TV channel and start that. But thank you everyone for stopping in. I saw a lot of awesome folks in the chat. I see Felenz there as well. I know Felenz and Easy have their Farhouse spaces on Fridays as well, so
Yep.
make sure you tap in with that. I don't know if you guys have any last words, and then we'll rock it out here. Easy if you want to go first.
Sure. And real quickly, I did see a question and I had to move closer to the router, so I don't have my Twitch with me. Somebody asked how to follow myself and Pichi on
I
Farcaster.
sent him in.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I mean, man, what an epic episode. Super stoked that we got to do this. Thank you, Pichi, for coming and hanging with us. I always look forward to Mondays and the State of the Union. And yeah, everybody just, stay safe out there and hold the vibes.
I love it. Thank you guys again so much for having me, and for everybody else. Hope to see you on the timeline, and catch you on Farcaster, because I think it's the best version of Web3 social media we have right now, and I think everybody should be there. And if it's not a space you're in now, like come hang out. It's still really early and really cool, and this is all the great stuff that we get to figure out on the fly, because we as the community have a chance to build this stuff. Like, you want a kids only Farcaster client? Cool, you could build it. Like, the Legos are there, everything's there to set this up. You want a adult only Farcaster client. You want to replicate something much more catered to a different thing. Like, you could do that, because there, even Supercast went open source like literally a week ago. So
Wow.
you have something you could download and probably vibe code your way into pretty quickly. And that is just not possible. You can't clone Reddit and get anybody on Reddit to sign into your app, but you could clone Supercast tomorrow, put some rails around it, and have your own client that everybody who's already on Farcaster could sign in with using their Farcaster ID. And that's pretty amazing that, like, that's the world we're in. You could plug all those Legos in and build whatever you want to build. And that's why I love Farcaster and want to keep building here and hanging out here.
Super cool.
Amazing. It was a blast having you, Pichi. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone in the chat. Thank you, Easy, for being here. And yeah, thank you all for being with us for episode 14.